What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe.
And Amy.
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are here for the penultimate chapter in The Gathering Storm by Django Wexler. Specifically, that is chapter 19 of 20. My quick review at the top is this story was hilarious. It is definitely worth your time. It is very nice, or it is a very nice way to bring a smile to at least my face, hopefully your face as well. It seemed like I thought there were more funny moments than you thought there were funny moments, but you also thought there were funny moments, but I will turn it over to you. What are your thoughts about this week's story? Oh, God. She didn't think it was funny at all.
Nor did I like it very much.
Wow, okay. All right, why?
I don't know. The humor seemed cheap and...
Interesting.
Just, I don't know. It just cheapened it. It made it like... I don't know.
All right.
The story, I don't know. It was not what I expected.
Well, I guess it depends on your style of humor then. That's absolutely fair. I can agree that it was... It I guess took a particular kind of a sense of humor, or a particular sense of humor that may not have been Amy's and may be much more my style. So that's fair that you may not have enjoyed it as much. Would you still say that people shouldn't read it?
Well, you should read it.
Okay.
I mean,
Right.
but I pretty much always say that, unless it's like so super terrible that...
I mean, we've had those.
Yeah, on occasion we have had those,
Yeah.
but for the most part, my suggestion is to read it before watching this video.
Right. And we would love for you to do so that when we go into this full review, that you can have your own opinions and join us in that discussion, whether they are comparative opinions or contrasting opinions. Either way, we would love to hear from you as well. That's what that comment section down below is for, so we would love to hear your voices and your opinions. So, but yeah, feel free to go read that, and then, of course, we would love for you to come back here and join in this discussion and watch the rest of this episode. So,
yeah, I just wanted to quickly apologize for the fact that I'm wearing a hood and kind of like curling up into this sweater, but I am just very cold.
yeah,
so.
it's like almost 60 degrees in our apartment.
Okay,
so.
I have yet to clean the radiators,
That's not
and
your
I
fault.
refuse to put the heat on until I have done so. So there you go.
It's not her fault. This apartment has interesting heat issues, but
Yeah,
that's
well,
really
last
neither
year
here
it
nor
did.
there.
We'll see if it's better this year, because if it's not, we'll have some conversations with the rental office, but that's neither here nor there.
Exactly. So, on to the full review itself then. I would say, I mean, up at the top, one thing that I noticed, I'll point this out and then we can move on to something else. Kaya bringing the gargoyles. Makes perfect sense. That's very, that is very Orzhov of her to have the gargoyles. They're stationed at Orzhova and, you know, the whole church thing and etc. That makes perfect sense. And this is written by Django Wexler, not by Greg Weisman. I just thought it was an interesting nod that one paragraph, right in the middle of the paragraph, in italicized language, is the only word that's italicized. It just says gargoyles. Capital G, period afterwards. Like, I thought that was an interesting nod to the guy who's writing the next two books in this story arc, is the guy that created the show Gargoyles. And so...
It's almost like if this had been released before the novels were, it would have been a spoiler of some kind.
We'll talk about that next week.
Or an Easter egg.
Yeah, well, yes, we'll talk about that next week as well, I'm sure. But yeah, that's just something that I noticed. Then we get the return of Hakara, which was cool to see her back. I was excited. I anticipated that she was going to return either this week or next week because we have the benefit of hindsight in, or like Amy said, since we know what the next book is, we know what happens broadly at the end of this book, and it's something that has not happened yet. So we needed Hakara to come back because something needs to happen. So, but I thought it was interesting because, again, it's a moment of, in the next story, I'm sure that it is a pretty big plot point, that Hakara is a pretty big plot point in the next chapter, chapter 20. But she was gone for a while in this story now, and now they're bringing her back. And that may be so that those of us reading the story can be like, oh, she's back. And again, in an attempt at a comedic chapter so that you can smile and laugh and remember that you enjoyed her, and then next chapter can come and we can deal with what happens there. But at first I read it and I was like, oh, she's back, that's great. And then I was like, oh, but now chapter 20 is going to come and what happens there, but we have to deal with this, like the fact that she's been gone for so long. But again, maybe it's just an absence makes the heart grow fonder thing. I don't know.
Opposite for me.
What's that? that you wish she was gone longer? Or?
No. She just came back, and when she did, it was annoying.
Is that by design, though?
Probably.
She's supposed to be annoying Rawl constantly.
But I like her.
Okay.
I did not like this version of her.
Okay. Fair enough. All right.
So I don't know.
So then,
how on purpose that was or not.
All right. Well, then I'm curious to see what you have to say about this. But my next point is that I think every single aspect of the Rakdos Circus was great. I enjoyed the description of the Rakdos Circus as it came in, the description of the sounds, the sights, just the look of everything, the look of every individual character that was part of that. They didn't need names. Only one of them really got one besides like a title of like the Juggler or whatever. Right. But I still could picture every single one of them. I knew exactly what it looked like, and I wanted it. I wanted to keep reading. I wanted to keep hearing more things. I just wrote like a checklist for myself of the cool things that were going on. So, okay, so you were nodding your head. So you enjoyed that part as well? Okay. Because I know that you, again, kind of going along with like not finding it necessarily comedic, may have meant that you didn't necessarily enjoy this as much, but I'd love to...
No, the circus part was interesting. About the only interesting part.
The circus, known as Master Panjandrum's Extraordinary Carnival of Delights, which I love. Master Panjandrum himself was great. I enjoyed that a lot, where he just unfolds himself from the stage and kind of... when they get attacked back by the Azorius guards, where he says, everybody's a critic, which is, again, in and of itself, a very cliched line,
yep.
but it was perfectly done because it was followed up by, show them what we do to critics, and then the murdering continues to happen. That was just, I loved that. Because again, it takes a cliche, but it completely turns it on its head, right? Saying everybody's a critic is usually what somebody says when they're getting panned for doing a poor job, no matter what. But this was like, everybody's a critic, kill the critics. Like, it was, so very Rakdos, where it's a performing cliche followed by death and blood. Like, I loved that so much. The modified accordion was kind of funny with the blats and stuff.
That part really just kind of made me think of like the current political climate a bit too much.
What's that? The
killing the critics.
That's fair. That's fair. I guess that brings it down a bit, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
sorry about it.
Whatever. I mean, I loved the juggler was incredible. Juggling a million things and then using those things as weapons and throwing them at people. Brilliant. I love that. Mwah. Absolutely perfect. All the drummers breaking their drums over their knees and pulling whips out from inside of them. Also beautiful. Loved that. Such an awesome bit of imagery there where they tell you about the juggler. And it's like, okay, it's a circus. It makes sense that there would be a juggler. And he's very talented because he's juggling a million things. And they're all different things. And they're being thrown in giant arcs. And then to describe each individual thing that's being thrown, and plates with razor edges and balls that expand into little darts or whatever. Amazing. I loved that a lot.
It was cool.
Yes. But the best, in my opinion, the best thing came a little bit later when one of the actors or acrobats or whatever you want to call them, performers, gets decapitated, and then the body and the head continue moving separately because they were two goblins in a trench coat.
Now that part I liked.
So good. So good. I mean, I just loved it. I love that so very much. Then we get to some more like serious stuff once we move away from the carnival, which I liked that was the distraction that Rakdos/Hekara had brought to help out Ral and Kaya and Hekara in this instance. So I thought that was creative on top of, like, that in and of itself was creative, on top of then everything within it being creative in terms of how they were fighting and being a distraction or whatever.
Yes.
Then we get into more serious stuff of them actually getting into the tower, them being Ral, Hekara, and Kaya, getting into the tower and fighting, and at first they were wary because there's nothing in the tower, and they're like, there's gotta be something. And then they find Tezzeret's constructs in there, which I thought was a very interesting thing. Because again, Tezzeret is gone now. He's not on Ravnica anymore, to our knowledge. Right now we know he's going to be on Amonkhet opening the door. The planar bridge. The door. You know what I mean. So he's not here anymore, but he left his constructs behind. But the other thing that's interesting is, and I guess for us the reader as well as for Ral and Niv Mizzet, there I guess was no doubt that Dovin was a traitor, because at this point, this with Tezzeret's constructs being there just proves it definitively.
Obviously, yeah.
But the machine not working could have just been that the machine didn't work. Like,
yeah.
Dovin could have absolutely just lied about it and just been like, oh, it doesn't work. Although I guess he's got all the guards outside, but still, like, that's what the Azorius were supposed to be doing, was protecting that beacon or that thing there. And so I don't know. I don't fully understand it myself, because I guess to go another level deep on this, Bolas wants it turned on. We know he wants it turned on because at the beginning of this story, chapter 1 or 2 of The Gathering Storm, Bolas puts the idea in Niv's head himself. And then Niv comes to Ral with the idea as the backup to the backup plan.
Right.
And so Bolas wants it turned on. We know that because of what the Elder Spell is going to be. So he wants the Planeswalkers to come. But I guess in talking with Dovin Baan about utilizing the Azorius forces, maybe he's got to put up the front that they're protecting it, because of the fact that if they weren't protecting it, maybe Ral would have gotten suspicious. Like, why aren't they protecting this? Maybe they want it turned on. So it's got to look like they don't want it turned on. It's just, that is a little confusing to me. And not something that I believe was explained in the novel War of the Spark. Maybe it was, and I've forgotten it because it wasn't fresh in my mind to be concerned with it, since I didn't know that the idea was planted in Niv's head, so to speak. So I'm not exactly sure how that goes. And if you have any insight out there, please feel free to let us know. I would love to learn something all the time. That's my goal.
I think there's just a little bit of vagueness in that. I think the through line of continuity that they were trying to create there has some missing parts.
Okay, that's fair enough. And I try to, especially these days, I try to give as much of a benefit of the doubt as I can, and so that's why I just brought it up as a question as opposed to being like, oh, there's a plot hole right there. You know, like, I'm curious. Maybe, because, trust me, I am very much known to miss something, right? That's absolutely a thing that could happen, where I'm just like, what's happening here? And somebody's like, duh, and points at something else that happened, and I'm like, oh, right, okay, that makes sense. So, you know, if it is something that I missed that you're aware of, let us know, but if you believe that it's ambiguity or a missing plot point, or like something that was, they dropped the ball somewhere, let us know that as well. Because I think all are plausible possibilities.
Right.
It's just interesting. And again, is it like the most egregious thing in the world? No, not really. Speaking of not the most egregious thing in the world, there was a little bit, and we talked about this last week because it was a big deal last week. There was a little bit of grammatical / spelling issues this week. Very small in comparison to last week, but it was still, again, just a little bit of a trip up. So if you missed last week's episode, we talked about this much more extensively, and I encourage you to go back and watch that. But yeah, it was less noticeable here, but there was a moment or two where I was reading it and I just got tripped up and I was like, oh, that's not what that word is supposed to be. It's supposed to be this, or that grammatically doesn't make sense. How is that sentence supposed to be written? Oh, it's this way. But then now I'm thinking about it grammatically as opposed to thinking of the story as a whole.
Yeah.
And that's upsetting. But it's much better than it was last week, so I'll give credit where it's due while also pointing it out in some way. And then I guess the last thing, unless you have anything else, was the two people that we see at the top of the tower. Kind of putting forth a resistance. And that is Lavinia, now in full Azorius armor again, as opposed to in her like street/spy clothes. Now she's in her full armor again, and standing next to Vraska. And Vraska and Dovin weren't working together previously. I mean, they were in that they were working towards the same goals, but they weren't in that I don't know that Dovin... Sorry, I'll rephrase. Dovin may have known that Bolus's plan was to have Vraska kill Lavinia. Or not Lavinia, Isperia. Very similar names, I apologize.
I was like,
to have Vraska kill Isperia, but Dovin never, like, came up to Vraska and was like, hey, listen, I know what you're about to do. That's great. I've got your back. You know what I mean? Like, he never... So, and since we were seeing it from Vraska's perspective, it's definitely possible that Dovin knew, and probably likely that Dovin knew, so that he would have an overarching knowledge of the plan, so that he would know what to do next and how to take over.
well, and Dovin Bond is not the type of character that would be like, hey, I've got your back.
It's
like
true.
That's, you know.
It's true.
I
Right.
think in any situation he wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and
So-
I mean, Bolus wouldn't have needed to tell Vraska either, because Vraska is, if nothing else, an assassin, right? Like, that was her original thing, is she was a Gorgon assassin, so for Bolus to just be like, that one needs to die, go ahead. You know, like, that's probably enough, and then Dovin doing all the stuff behind the scenes so that Vraska doesn't need to know that Dovin is involved in any way. So yeah, I guess that makes sense, but now, like, does she know it now? Now that she's blatantly working with the Azorius? Like, have they spoken to each other? Is that how that works, or...
Well, I get the feeling that a lot of the people that Bolus has control over are unaware of a majority of the other people that Bolus is in control over.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
For the purposes of it making it more difficult for them to feel like they can escape his clutches.
Yeah.
If you know, if they can form a club like, oh, we're the under Bolus's thumb club, then they can rise up against him.
Yeah, fair
A
point.
lot
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, we've seen that with Tezzeret enough where, like, Tezzeret was on one side of it, and then he was on the other, and then he was back again. Like, Tezzeret loves being kind of all over the place. He's the, for my hardcore X-Men fans out there, he's the Mr. Sinister to Bolus's Apocalypse. Just throwing that out there. And that, if that went over your head, yeah, it went over Amy's as well. So don't feel left out. But yeah, I'm curious, because again, we know what's going to happen next week, and I'm being somewhat coy in case you don't want spoilers. I'll try to do my best about not revealing the main, like, one of the big things that's going to happen in Chapter 20. And the only reason we know that is because we've read War of the Spark. So if you've read War of the Spark, you know what's going to happen as well if you recall everything. It's not that we read Chapter 20 and so we know. It's that we've read the next part of this story because we had to. And so we know that. But we know one major thing that's going to happen next week. And so it's interesting that Lavinia is there with Vraska. I'm curious as to whether Lavinia is going to immediately turn on Vraska and help out, since she was helping out Rawl this whole time. Is she going to pretend that she's with Vraska for a little while, where, like, they're going to have to kind of dodge Lavinia for a bit as well with her attacking them, or how that is going to necessarily work? Or is she just never going to show her true colors so that she can get closer to Dovin Bond in hopes of taking him down once she gets close enough?
I mean, I would try to get close to Dovin. I love him.
I'm so glad. He's an evil bastard.
I love him.
So, speaking of War of the Spark, let's bring it down, shall we?
Or I should say I love the old Dovin from the older stories.
From Kaladesh.
Yeah.
Okay. And Ether Revolt, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
In these stories, he's just kind of meh.
Well.
And a dick.
Well, I was going to say, he's been present in the Gathering Storm, where every time we've heard from him, he's been putting up a facade. There has not really been a moment where he has spoken as Dovin Bun, the pawn of Nicol Bolas, or whatever. And in War of the Spark, the novel, I don't really want to say that I trust the characterization of any of those characters. Yeah. And so, let's get into it. Just for a bit. It's not going to be a lot, because we have not read the book yet.
No.
We have not read War of the Spark Forsaken yet. Yet being the operative word. In fact, I'm checking. We have not received the book yet, which means we very well may not have pre-ordered it, but it's very simple to get a copy. I'm sure there will be plenty left over.
Yeah. We thought we pre-ordered it, but it should have been here.
Right. I'll look. I maybe I didn't pre-order it. I thought I told myself I'd do it later or whatever. Maybe. That's not your concern. What is your concern is if you have not heard about the story yet, and you are a fan of the older stories, I tend to believe the people who are posting the clips of the novel, the screen grabs or whatever you want to call it, of the text from the novel as it is portrayed to us. There is one problematic thing, which I wrote this out on Twitter. If you follow us on Twitter, you saw the tweet. But I wish more people watched this show.
Yeah.
For many reasons, many different reasons. But one of which is because we've been talking about the retconning of main character stories for a long time, especially in relation to this, The Gathering Storm. And again, I am not putting any of that on Django Wexler.
Right.
And I put that on Twitter as well, although with regard to Greg Weisman. Now, I think the critique or criticism of Greg Weisman's writing ability is a fair critique, and definitely not something that could get pushed off onto the main story team currently in Wizards of the Coast.
And also something that I wouldn't say about Django Wexler.
Right. Mm-hmm. But that's why I'm saying, so that criticism is fair for that. I don't put anything poor on Django in this, in anything. But again, if there is such a list of plot points that need to be hit, the turn Mazarek against Vraska and make Vraska heavily distrust Jace for no reason and gain her memories back from a random character that is in no way as powerful a telepath as Nicol Bolas or Jace,
right,
then all of those points were absolutely hit, and they were hit with good writing. It's just that we know the stories that came before, and we know that it doesn't make any goddamn sense in continuity. But that's not Django's fault, because he didn't write all the other stories. He is just being told what to write here.
Nor did he, stand up and say, hey, these are the story points you want me to hit? Well, I'm not going to do that, because I read the older stories, and I liked them, and I'm going to continue that through line. Because then they would have just been like, oh, you're fired. Yeah.
Well, and even that, sure, there's that, but there's also, the story team are the ones who control what the authors read beforehand, because they can require it, and then I assume if you are an author of those kinds of stories, you're then focused on completing your job, your contracted job, and not saying, you know what I'm also going to do is go read all the other background material that they didn't give me. It's like, no.
You're not gonna, oh, I'll present myself with that knowledge, although the people who should have presented me with it chose not to present me with it, you know?
Well, and again, because, how far do you go back? Does he read Dominaria? Is that helpful in any way?
I mean, realistically, no.
But that's my point. That's why I bring it up, right? So, but to move away from Django Wexler, because that's in no way what we're talking about, really. We can move to War of the Spark Forsaken, which I think it's interesting that I have not heard a single, and I mean a single, positive thing about this novel from anyone that was not Del Rey Books or Wizards Magic, the accounts that are saying, go buy this book. That financially profit from someone picking it up.
That's really sad.
Literally not a single one. Now, an argument can probably be made that if you liked it, you might not go online and try to be one voice among 10,000 that's saying it's terrible to be like, I actually kind of liked it.
That's kind of what we did with the first novel.
Yeah, it's true. And yet it wasn't a strong front. It was just like, yeah, it was fine. Like, because again, I posited that the War of the Spark novel, the original, this one here, that one was, I thought, written for people new to the Magic story.
Yeah.
And so going super
we kept
in
that
depth
thought in our heads as we took into account what kind of information would be in that story.
Right. As opposed to, what are we now, 5-6 year veterans of reading every bit of Magic story that gets released, knowing every single one of these characters, and almost everything that's been put forth about them and the worlds that they are all from and or are residing in presently.
Right.
Like, all of that. So, yeah, I sort of understood, and you could say that we were kind of War of the Spark apologists. But combining it with retconning to the degree that we've been hearing Forsaken has been doing, plus the complete amount of disrespect that's being shown to past writers, it's a very bad look.
Well, and to the LGBT community, I mean.
Yes, exactly. It's a shame, but unfortunately, it's not too big of a surprise. Like, very unfortunately, it's not too big of a surprise.
Right.
But we've been saying for weeks, and this is our opinion only. I actually haven't seen this really many other places or from many other people. I'm not saying we're the only ones saying this. But the fact that they took the relationship of Jace and Veraska and seemed to try to scrub it out in favor of Jace and Liliana, which there's one side of that is, there's a dangerous aspect to touting that, first of all. But second of all, that we're doing it because you're taking again, this is me kind of speaking as the other people in the way that I view it, or we view it, but taking the gross Gorgon woman with head tentacles and replacing her with the sexy woman that you can put in a revealing dress. And that's what I see. That's what, and until I see anything different or hear anything different, that's my opinion, because that's what I've been shown by this story team. And combining it with the fact that Chandra's love interests have to be decidedly male, what else am I supposed to think? Except that you don't get it. Like, I am, I myself am an ally to the LGBT community, or at least I'd like to consider myself to be one. But so I can't speak much further on it than that, except that there was a really cool relationship brewing, and then it seems like someone who was super homophobic showed up and was like, don't worry, it's not, she didn't like that girl. Guys only. Big, brawny, burly guys. That's who Chandra likes. Oh, okay. Relax, guy. We
didn't care. It's fine.
Yeah. And it doesn't take anything away from you to have two characters that are female actually like each other. It doesn't...
But it means his dick is small, obviously.
I mean, there are a lot of reasons why I think his dick is small. That is not really one... that is not really one of them, but it's steadily becoming one.
Right? I know. I know.
Yeah, it's sad. It's genuinely sad, and we have to joke.
It's sad in more than one respect. It's sad in more than one way that you could interpret the word sad. I mean, it's just
yeah.
Like, it's pathetic as well as being actually sad.
Yeah.
And every aspect of sad in between those two. I mean, it's I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, and I'll say this now, and I'll let Amy jump in if you're gonna get where I'm going here. I'd appreciate it. I'll see what I can do. Our shout outs and our love and our thoughts go out to the Doug Byers, the Allison Lorses, the Michael E. Chows, etc. of the world, because those are the ones we heard from today, but that doesn't mean that the likes of Kelly Diggs aren't thinking about it. They just haven't publicly stated anything, at least at the time of recording. But our love goes out to you as just the two of us, of course, but also with the hope that the rest of the community, or the knowledge, I should say, especially with the three names that I mentioned who had spoken out today and had responses given to them, please know that all of us join you all, and I'm pointing to the viewers as well as those named individuals that I just said, in showing off our...
#Vorthos Pride.
Like, so much more now than ever before. But always. I mean, we say it every show, and sure, you can...
We love you guys.
Yeah.
We are loyal.
Yeah.
And we are sorry.
And we're sorry. Because it sucks. It's obviously not our fault, because we hate it just as much as everybody else does.
Right.
Although, that's not fair. I don't know that I hate it as much as you do. Because it is, I would take it, and maybe this is me being fragile, I would take it as a personal offense. If my stories that I worked hard for and that I wrote for were...
And that were incredible.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And were loved, and that there was nothing wrong with, were bastardized in the way that they're currently being bastardized and being stripped bit by bit away from what they were and from what that team was building towards in an increasingly beneficial way. It's a shame. And I hope we're not speaking too vaguely. I hope we haven't lost anyone in what we're speaking about. But
if we have, maybe, I guess, check Twitter.
Well, check online. Like, search War of the Spark Forsaken, and then don't listen to anything Del Rey Books or Wizards Magic says if you're looking for what we're talking about.
Right.
Feel free to always look at both sides of any argument.
Yes.
And again,
especially, please.
Right. And especially because, again, at the time of recording, to my knowledge, I mean, we've been reading the story and then sitting over here getting ready to film, but as of at least 3 hours ago, nothing major had been heard from in terms of a rebuttal to the complaints that lots of people have had who have read the book so far and or have passed around the particular passage that we're at least referring to here, the 1 or 2 paragraphs.
There was seemingly none at all in terms of like a public statement or anything being made.
Right, but the reason I'm mentioning is because if something were to come out after we record this but before we post it, or after we post it or whatever, please don't think that I'm saying don't listen to what the company or the distributor has to say.
Absolutely not.
You always listen to both sides. Just realize, like, make them accountable. Make them, like, understand when you're reading that what you're reading should be accurate and it should be fair. And there should
be good.
Yeah. And it should be real, and like there should be an actual reason. Yeah. But there should be an actual reason. Which I personally can't see one that makes any bit of sense, but...
Well, except what you mentioned.
Right. Well, okay, so then the company could turn around and just fire the offending individual and say, you know, it was that person's fault or whatever. I find it very interesting that there are a large number of creators in the community and or just fans, Vorthos fans in the community, who have said that they genuinely want these 2 books, this one and Forsaken, to just be collectively viewed as non-canonical. And I think that's a very interesting way of looking at it. Because the company is in charge of how their message gets out there. But
But ultimately the fans are rejecting it.
Right. Well, because it's offensive.
Retcon the retcon.
I don't know where I was going with that. Ignore me.
There's a lot.
We've
It's
seen
a lot.
we've seen things similar to this in the past, I think, with fans rebelling against something that was put out that they don't believe speaks to the world that they know and love.
Right.
You know, in comic books, I'll think all the way back to, was it Brand New Day, the Spider-Man story, or the Clone Saga, or whatever. Thinking to more recently, and this is kind of the other end of the spectrum from what I understand, but people who didn't like The Last Jedi from Star Wars, who said that they wanted it, you know, rewritten, and there was like petitions, whatever. And again, I think those are two sides of a spectrum there. I don't think that those are comparable one way or another, except to say that they are a collective group asking for a story that was written and presented to be rewritten and gotten rid of, basically. And it'll be interesting to see where this goes from here. And yet, I'm not super optimistic. I'm not really going to hold my breath yet on it, because I don't know. I don't know where we're going to go from here, necessarily. But, that being said, to kind of close out on a positive, on an upswing, we will be reading it. We will be reading it. We will be buying it. We will get it delivered. We will be reading it. We will have the hard copy in our hands. And since we were one of the apologists, if you will, for this one, if we feel like that through line of, for newer readers, holds, then we'll let you know. But if we agree with a lot of the people that I've seen commenting online that it sounds like it was written by a 5-year-old and that the homophobia, if you will, shines through brightly, I guess if you've listened to this whole rant from us, I don't think you would have to question whether or not we'd be willing to say it.
Right.
Because we've been saying it. So yeah. Next week, positive, is chapter 20. The week after, I can almost guarantee you, unless Amy and I go nuts on it, I can almost guarantee you the week after will not be the first part of our review of Forsaken, of War of the Spark Forsaken.
Yeah, we're just simply not going to have enough time.
I don't think so. I know there are people who got the book and just read it overnight. Those are people who... are very dedicated readers, are very interested readers, and or after they read it, very frustrated readers.
Right.
But
or people who wanted to at least know how bad it was as soon as possible.
Right, and a lot of the people that I saw are Magic content creators, so it's their job to do that.
Right.
We are also Magic content creators, but
it's not our job.
No.
We have jobs
yes.
that take up a lot of time.
Yes. And a lot of mental capacities.
Oh, yes. God, yes. Especially right before the end of the year.
Yes, that's fair as well. Crunch time, so to speak. So but we're going to do the best that we can. And as promised last week, if you missed last week's episode, we will have content in 2 weeks on Thursday, even if it is not JaAR. It will be a video nonetheless, because we are still putting out 2 videos a week on this channel, no question. And we do have still lots of product to open, because even though I said it last week that I was looking at a lot of product and we were going to be opening it, you better believe we didn't. So there's still a lot of stuff that we need to film. We have been, I will say, filming a lot of things for our video game channel.
Yes, please check it out.
So you should. The links to all of our channels are in the description. The links to our Facebook and Twitter are always in the description. These videos come out on Thursdays every Wednesday since the inception of the video game channel. We've had Pokemon videos coming out, Pokemon Red, Amy playing through the game for the first time ever and experiencing it brand new, completely blind going in, with a little help from me.
Not completely blind, yeah. I had you as a guide.
Well, and you knew some of the Pokemon going in as well, like names and evolutions a bit. But some of the stuff that's already up there is very good. Very, very good. And I highly encourage you to check it out. Episode 12, I believe, just came out the day before this video goes out. So
it was fun. It was interesting.
yeah.
I will say that.
Yeah.
And please check out my new channel. It's brand new. It's only got 2 videos on it. I do not have an upload schedule yet. I haven't decided what I'm doing exactly even for the channel yet. What I'm attempting to do is mostly gluten-free product reviews. But right now what's up there is 2 videos that were associated with the Great Eldraine Bake Off. So obviously if you're watching this, you're an MTG fan, so please check out those videos as well.
They're really cool. And again, if you saw the video that we put up on this channel with regards to the Great Eldraine Bake Off, that one is a lot tastier than mine was.
Mine, yes.
Amy's was actually edible. So
modestly, I would agree.
yeah. So I also encourage you again. Amy put a lot of work into those 2 videos, both with.
It was just fun.
But with research, with cooking, with filming, with editing. That was all Amy. That's all her channel.
Those were the first 2 videos that I have ever edited. So I am sorry in advance.
I think they're great. And for those of you that are willing to sit through this much of a slog, those videos are super short in comparison. So
yes.
Go enjoy those like little snack bites, if you will, from Amy's new channel, Gluten Free for All.
Yes.
Again, down in the description, or it'll pop up over here, I'm sure, at the end. But that's going to be the end. I'm sorry for the depressing comments towards the end, but it was something we wanted to address, and we didn't want to do it at the top because we had what turned out to be funny to some, a story at to review, and good moments by a good author, and so we wanted to be able to talk about that without having to bring up all the negative stuff until afterwards. So that is done now. We will be back next week, as I said, with Chapter 20, the grand finale of what will hopefully not be the last good story that we read for Magic. Hopefully that comes back. We've heard nothing as of yet. Yeah, we've heard nothing as of yet for the Theros Beyond Death stories. Who's writing them, if they're being written, how they will be delivered, if they'll be $4 like the Great Eldraine, the Throne of Eldraine stories were. We will have to wait and see on that. But stay tuned to our channel, to our social medias, and to JaAR.
Yeah.
Every Thursday that we have content to make it for. Otherwise, we will have a video of some kind. But yes, this is going to be us here at the Geek for All family of channels signing off. I didn't forget. Please, as we said, if you want, feel free to throw a positive word in the direction of those creators that you did enjoy and that you do enjoy, because it seems like they need it right now. And I don't blame them, because I know how I feel, and I didn't write them.
Right.
I just read them and then moved on with my life. Whereas that was presumably their lives for a great deal of time. And it's being...
And a meaningful aspect of their lives,
right.
too. You can tell.
Well, and they received a lot of appropriate praise and love and friendship from that. And it was something that they could be proud of. And now it
it fostered a community.
Yeah. And now it's weirdly being taken away from them.
And from the rest of us,
right.
too.
So our hearts go out, our love goes out, our hugs. And joining the rest of the community, as we always have done, we will continue to join in showing off our...
#Vorthos Pride.
It's important. It's always important. I can't stress that enough. It is always important, and it's just continuing to be important now, but we've never stopped talking about it, and we don't plan to. So, thank you all so very much for watching. From all of us here, I already used that line, so I will just say, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.